there's one guy on the roster though. So we're kind of talking about, free agents, possible trades and all that kind of stuff. But there's one guy on the roster that, from watching the video clips, watching the reels from these practice sessions, both the ones that have been posted by the beat reporters and the ones that the Browns are posting themselves, there seems to be one guy that I'm seeing, at least this past week, who's constantly been on the receiving end of some nice passes other than Jerry Jeudy. And that is Jamari Thrash. The passes that I saw on the clips, I mean, we're talking, he's catching passes from Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett. So that's clearly first team reps. We know that. So is Jamari Thrash acting as the de facto wide receiver 2 right now at OTAs with these other, with, Tillman sideline and Johnson and Bell not there? Is it Jeudy and then Thrash? So I wanted to go back and look because, they drafted him in the 5th round last year. He had, I think, 7 total targets on the season, but I keep cautioning people not to make an entire evaluation on any of the players, specifically the linemen is what I've been talking about, over last year's performance, because the offense was so bad. The offense was the worst we've ever seen, and everybody looked significantly worse in that offense. So was Jamari Thrash just another victim of that? And I wanted to go back and look and see, okay, what was his last year in college? How did he do? And I mean, this was a guy who had 62 receptions, 848 yards, 6 touchdowns, but the deeper metrics, he had 418 yards were after the catch. So half of his yardage came after the catch. He's a good yak player. He had 2.35 yards per route run. That's pretty nice. 11.1 ADOT. I think that there could be a role for Jamari Thrash. We just unfortunately didn't get to see hardly any of him at all last year. But what do you think about Jamari?
It'd be tough to evaluate him because, I mean, you got into a situation where with Deshaun Watson, he was really a one-read guy at the point that he was playing, and he wasn't very good. If he could have lit it up at all, maybe most of those receptions came when Jameis was in for his cup of coffee, and then you go back down to DTR, which was worse than what Deshaun was performing on the field. Why even put him in at that point? So, yes, he can run a precise route. That's why we drafted him. We know that Steve Smith Sr. was super high on this guy and thought that he would have a bigger role in Cleveland. And it's based on what I've seen. I've seen all the same highlights you have. I did notice that number 80 was catching a ton of balls, and he's taking a huge advantage of the situation with Deontay. So maybe we can thank Deontay if he has a great season and he doesn't show up or ball out. But Thrash is getting his opportunities and he's going forward with it. So the main thing is we got to see what these guys can do in the preseason.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was just pulling up his Jamari Thrash's NFL draft profile from last year before he was selected. His strengths, footwork in the early stages of his release is smooth and sudden, able to rip off route cuts at tight angles, possesses second gear for mid-route separation. Those are things that fit this offense with Kevin Stefanski. He's got above average ball tracking and pace adjustment to bring in deep passes and does a nice job of uncovering during quarterback scramble mode. So yeah, he's just a guy that obviously I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, Jamari Thrash, breakout player for 2025. But at the same time, I'm not going to write him off completely just based on basically a nothing burger as a rookie in that pathetic POS offense that Ken Dorsey was running.
Man, when I heard you talk about those traits, I thought you were talking about Jerry Jeudy there for a second. Like, he seems very, very similar to him, especially with the suddenness and the takeoff in the intermediate routes. As far as tracking the ball, I don't know if you can compare those traits, but he did sound a little bit like Jeudy. Maybe his body composition is too, even knowing that Jeudy has put on a couple extra pounds as well.
Yeah, I mean, he's 6 foot 188, or at least that's what he was listed coming out. He ran a 4.46 40. Trying to see like the weaknesses. Catch space gets snatched up due to a lack of play strength. So basically what they say is he makes what he lacks in play strength, at least coming out of college, he makes up for with his speed and his route running. He can lose focus when dealing with contact inside the route. He did have I think like 8 drops or something that last year in college was a knock on him. He allows throws to get on top of him, turn into drops, and he lacks hand strength to finish catches through contact. But again, if you're able to run your routes and create separation, and the quarterback, this is why it's so big. This is why The timing and the accuracy is so important for these guys. Get the ball out on time and on target. Put it where the receiver can get it and get yards after the catch. A guy like Jamari Thrash could surprise this year.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, obviously we drafted him for a reason. Main thing was the fit for the timing style of offense that we have. So he's taking advantage of his opportunities. Like I said, let's see what he can do in training camp when it comes up, and then into preseason, and see if he can separate himself from the seconds and get some one time.
Yeah, I would love to see that because, you know, David Bell, again, coming off the hip injury, had surgery and everything, so he's recovering, and he's never been impressive, you know, and he's been around now for a while. Michael Woods, you know, had the Achilles injury a couple years ago. He's a bigger body guy, but again, he was a 6th-round pick. I just never really flashed too much. And he's had some opportunity to do so as well. Jamari Thrash is kind of still that unknown. And I'd love to see him in the offense in which he was intended to play in, is Kevin Stefanski's. I don't think he was the fit. Actually, nobody was a fit for whatever Ken Dorsey was trying to do last year. So I'm not sitting here with super high hopes like, oh, I'm banking on Jamari Thrash. But I'm cautiously optimistic to see what he can do in Kevin's offense, which we know is way more productive.
Yeah. I mean, I still want to see more out of Said Till, but I think we definitely have to pick up another receiver somehow through trade is, I think, the avenue, because I don't think the guys that are in free agency that are available, I think their sights are set on another, maybe a little bit more winning than what's perceived at this point for the Browns right now.
Yeah. No, I agree with you on that.